Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so let me just scroll ahead to where we were. Here we go. All right, thank you again. And please don't hesitate to let me know when you're having difficulties hearing me or seeing what's on the screen. I appreciate it very much.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. So our learning goals for today. Who are dual language learners? What is dialogic reading? And how can we support parents in engaging in dialogic reading at home? So our dual language learners, by definition, is a child who is learning two languages at the same time. For the children that you are working with, probably between 3 and 5, maybe even younger if you're working in infant toddler programs. These are children that are exposed to more than one language. For many of the children here in Imperial Valley, the primary language is Spanish. And so many of the children that are coming to your sites are coming with Spanish as their primary language and are exposed to and learning English at your site. So by definition, a dual language learner is a child who is learning two languages simultaneously. In other words, they're not stopping from learning one language in order to learn a second language. Both languages are being developed simultaneously. I want to share this video with you that explains a little bit more about what a dual language learner is and the value, the benefit of being a dual language learner. So I'm going to share the video, but before I share it, I want to let you know that after the video, we're going to have an opportunity for you to chime in the chat box to share some key ideas that you saw or heard in the video clip. So as we prepare to view, I want you to listen for key ideas about dual language learners. Here we go.
Mía, ¿qué te gusta de tu cabello? ¿Largo? ¿Corto? Está rizado. Muy bien. Pasas a Aaron.
Dual language learners are the youth of our state. They're a large percentage of the kids in our schools now and an increasingly large percentage of the young ones that are entering school.
And now, in light of the policy change, we are now seeing much more interest in dual language and multilingual education.
The recent neuroscience and developmental science is showing what an advantage it is to be a dual language learner. It's a cognitive advantage, it's a developmental advantage.
Right now, the majority of the kids are not ready. They don't have the right levels of English or their home language.
In order to succeed in English, we have to support that first language, because if they don't have a foundation in the language that they first learned, they're never going to become really proficient and successful academically in English.
California can be a model. We know that if we support two languages, these kids are going to be better learners. Now we have a lot of evidence of what works, and it's not only being bilingual, but just having strategies to work with the families to support diversity.
So if we're going to create a staff and professionals who are able to support dual language learners in our country, we have to give them the skills to support those children.
Okay, so that was a very short video, but there was some really important key ideas in that video. I want you to take a moment and take advantage of the chat box. Let me move on to the next screen. Take advantage of the chat box to think about and address this question. What is one key idea that you want to remember from this video? You could write it in a word or a phrase or a sentence. Go ahead and take a minute to think and jot down a key idea that you want to remember from the video clip. And I'll start just to get us started. So the primary language is important. 60% of California children are dual language learners. We need to support children in their primary language. Dual language learners could use some support in school, absolutely. Home language. Kids that speak 2 languages do better at school. Yes, the research supports that. Children are very smart at an early age. Yes, they're little sponges. They pick up everything. Yes, we need to support children's primary language. To succeed in English, we have to support in their primary language. More brain connections. Supporting the home language in order for dual language learners to succeed in English language development. Lots of key ideas regarding primary language. I'm really happy to hear that. Really happy to hear that. That was one thing that really stood out for many of you. Here's another one: educate parents that it's okay that children learn 2 languages. Absolutely. Oftentimes, and I speak from experience as a classroom teacher and from talking to many of you, oftentimes parents believe, they have this belief that it's important for children to drop or stop learning their primary language or their literacy once they get to school so that they can learn English a lot faster. And that actually is counterproductive. That is actually not true. So it is important for us to be able to share that and talk to parents and let them know that the stronger the primary language is, and literacy and vocabulary in the primary language, the more successful their children will be, especially once they get into the elementary schools, the public schools. So on that note, because that's one of the key ideas that many of you shared and are sharing, this is a compilation of research that supports this big idea of how important and how valuable the primary language is. So in order to develop proficiency in developing proficiency in the first language, in other words, the more fluent, the more literate a child is in his or her first language, the more successful he or she will be in learning a second language, not just English. It could be any second language. But the value of English is that English and Spanish are very, very similar languages. So here in Imperial County, given the fact that so many of our children coming to your sites are Spanish speakers, we can take advantage and maximize in the similarities of English and Spanish to help them both develop both Spanish literacy skills and, most importantly, English literacy skills. What we need to remember is that children at this age, early childhood age, learn in 2 languages when they are dual language learners. Think about all the experiences that they encounter at home, engaging with their family, engaging experiences in the community. If they are Spanish speakers, then they are experiencing the world and developing vocabulary and language in that primary language. They are building a knowledge base of the world, of how they interact with each other, with the adults, in the community, and at school. Children are learning in 2 languages, and so we want to maximize that asset being the primary language. I'm going to share another very short video clip from a researcher who has taken the time to explore this research-based strategy that we're going to move into next, which is called dialogic reading. Some of you may be familiar with this strategy, and so if you are, I'm looking forward to your insights in the chat box. And if this is new to you, then hold on to your hats, because you're going to experience a strategy that is not only research-based and powerful, but very easy to implement, even in an online remote learning setting. So let's hear from a researcher, Dr. Christopher Lonergan, that's going to talk to us a little bit about what dialogic reading is and what it is not. Here we go.
I'm a professor of psychology at Florida State University. The typical reading you see in early childhood settings are where maybe the whole class is sitting around in circle time and the teacher is just reading the book and the children are listening. In dialogic reading, what happens is that the typical role between the adult and the child, or the teacher and the children, is shifted. So rather than just the children being passive listeners to the story, the teacher or the adult is having the children help tell part of the story. And if the teacher or the adult facilitates that by having the children answer some questions or provide additional expansions on things they've heard, or maybe even remembering other things they did that actually relate to the story. So dialogic reading is interactive in the sense that the teacher is having a dialogue with children about the story or using the book as a way to have the dialogue, whereas in regular shared reading, the teacher is just reading and the children are listening. So it's a very passive, kind of receptive model of the book. Now, there's another type of shared reading, which some people call interactive shared reading, where teachers may occasionally ask questions of children about the story they're reading, but it's not as organized, it's not as systematic as it would be in dialogic reading. And the focus of dialogic reading is really less about the book, and it's really more about having a language interaction around the book.
So some key ideas from Dr. Lonergan. In the name itself, dialogic reading, it reminds us that it's a dialogue between you, the teacher, and the children, using a book as the tool to help develop language and vocabulary. So within the title, dialogic reading, it helps to remind us that it's less about, I'm quoting him, less about the book and more about language interaction with you and with the book itself. So it is interactive. Another key feature of dialogic reading is that it's systematic. There is a system for how to implement dialogic reading. As simple as it sounds, and it looks in this image where it's a teacher holding up a book in front of children and reading the book, it really is more about asking questions that are going to help the children respond in such a way that requires them to use more language, to develop different literacy skills and different understanding and concept development, not just about literacy. Think about all the different content in the books that you share with your children. Math books. So through dialogic reading, you can develop some numeracy, some learning about the shapes, learning about the colors. Maybe you're exploring a book about how a plant grows in science. And so you have an opportunity to share concepts related to how things grow and what plants need, like earth and water and sun, right? So although dialogic reading helps with language development and oral language development and vocabulary development, it's also a very wonderful opportunity to develop other skills. So how do we engage in this systematic way of developing a dialogic reading lesson or opportunity? We use the crowd technique. And when I say crowd, I mean this crowd right here. So each one of the letters represents a type of prompt or a way for me, the teacher, to be able to provide a language frame or sometimes a question to help the child use language to learn vocabulary and to develop a better comprehension of what we're reading and talking about. So I'm going to walk you through and give you some examples of each of these types of questions. But before I do that, I want you to remember a few things about dialogic reading and how we use the crowd technique. So you'll notice that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 types of questions. What I want you to remember is that you don't have to use all of the questions for every dialogic reading opportunity. Maybe you only choose a completion prompt or an open-ended prompt with one particular book. Maybe for a pattern, a different type of book, you only use a recall prompt and a WH prompt, right? You don't have to use every single type of prompt for every book. What you do want to is provide a variety. So don't just focus on the C prompt, because it's kind of easy for me to remember, and that's kind of the one I always go to. You do want to offer a variety of questions, because each type of prompt or question elicits a different type of response from the child, therefore giving them more opportunities to develop their language. So let's walk through each one of the prompts just to give us an idea of what they mean. So the first type of prompt or question is a leave in the blank type of question. So I'm pretty sure that many of you, if not all of you, have at least one pattern book in your school library. So when I think about a pattern book, I think about Brown Bear, right? So this is a book that's repetitive. So when you are using that type of book, a pattern book, then this type of prompt fits very, very well with this type of a book. So for example, once you read the book or review the book with the child, they will see that every section of the book, of the story, is repetitive. Brown bear, what do you see? Right? So that's kind of the language. That's the language that repeats. So it gives a child multiple opportunities to engage and experience and use that language. And so you leave out a part of that repetitive language from this type of book so that they can fill in the blank. So this type of prompt, a completion prompt, lends itself to pattern books, but not only pattern books. It's just one of the easiest ones that, that you can use for this type of a prompt. The next type of prompt is a recall prompt. These are questions that we ask children about what they may have heard or remembered from maybe the page before. It's just a way to check to see that they are engaged and that they are remembering or comprehending what they are listening to. The next type of prompt is an open-ended prompt. These prompts are the easiest prompts, and these are the prompts that you probably are going to be able to use over and over for any type of book, because these are the prompts that really, truly have no quote-unquote wrong answer, right? So these are the types of opportunities where we ask kids to make predictions or what they think is going to happen next, or tell me more about what you see in this picture. What does that make you think about? They're open-ended, and so children have an opportunity to really just share what they know, what they see, and based on their background knowledge and what they've learned so far, they're able to share a lot of information. In other words, we're not looking for one particular type of answer. So the open-ended prompts really lend themselves for rich vocabulary development. Next are the W prompts. So here we see why and how, but I like to add who, what, when, and where. These are the what I call the right there questions. So these are the questions that you can point to a part of the book, a word, an image, and ask a WH question. Where did this happen? Where is the bear? Well, why is he laying down and not sitting anymore? So these are the different types of very simple, right there types of questions that come directly from what the children are seeing and listening as you walk them through dialogic reading. And the last type of question are the distancing prompts. These are kind of, they're fun because the children have an opportunity to really share their experiences with you. So we have to be really mindful of what and when we ask these types of questions. So if you're reading a book about friendship, and it has something to do with the characters disagreeing, maybe you can ask, have you ever had an argument with your friend? Or have you ever helped your friend because he or she was sad? So it's an opportunity to really tap into the child's background knowledge and experiences of the world. So these are the 5 different types of questions that are necessary for us to plan and implement as we're designing our dialogic reading opportunities. So what I want to do next is share with you another short video of how to prepare a book for dialogic reading. This is very short and very useful, to the point, to give us a clear example of how to prepare a dialogic reading questions. Keep in mind that these 5 questions that we just went through are the focus, are the tool for how to engage in dialogic reading. So let's share.
In this video, a teacher prepares her book selection for a read-aloud that will include using dialogic reading strategies. The teacher first previewed and read the book so that she could identify opportunities to engage children in the dialogic reading experience using specific prompts. As we've learned, these prompts have a specific purpose: to provide opportunities for children to practice new oral language skills and for adults to elaborate children's responses and provide rich language models. After the teacher generates prompts of various types using the crowd strategy planning sheet, she transfers them to sticky notes to place in the book. Because this is a new strategy for her, she includes the letter C, R, O, W, or D associated with the prompt. This helps her identify the expected responses so that she is ready to scaffold and elaborate language when children respond. Once all of the prompts have been transferred to the sticky notes, the teacher previews the book again and places the prompts on the appropriate pages. This helps her know when she will pose a question in the context of the text. Now, when she reads this book to her children, she is ready to engage them in dialogic reading and maximize their oral language experience.
So hopefully you were able to see how simple it is to really analyze a book for the purpose of creating a dialogic reading experience. What's key here, folks, is that we use those 5 prompts. Remember, you don't have to use them all at the same time, and you don't have to use them all every time. You want to pick and choose the appropriate prompts that lend themselves best to the books that you are sharing with the children. So besides the dialogic reading prompts, the crowd prompts, we also want to take into consideration that the questions themselves alone are not going to make the book or the experience come alive. It's imperative, it's critical that we as the teacher are engaging with the children and the book and the dialogic reading prompts, and maximizing opportunities to use visuals, to use movements and gestures to help children understand maybe some unknown vocabulary, to use synonyms or a different word for a word that they may not know so that they can become familiar with it, to point out illustrations as we are reading or asking questions about the book, to direct children to what we're talking about, and to use rich explanations. Oftentimes when we give a definition for a word, many of the words in the definition are unknown words for the children. So by giving an explanation of something instead of a definition, it really helps children understand what they are listening to, what they are observing, what they are quote unquote reading through the dialogic reading experience. And remember, this is more than just asking the dialogic reading prompts. It's important that we take into consideration how we engage the children in the book itself using these ideas. So one more video, and this video is a wonderful video because I think it does two things. It gives us an example, right? A way to implement dialogic reading. And it also gives us an opportunity to listen to a teacher walk us through how she plans and why she plans the dialogic reading experience the way that she does. This is a little bit longer than the previous video, but I think that you'll find that it's very, very helpful in helping you develop a clear understanding of how to move forward in developing dialogic reading lessons. So for this particular video, what I want you to listen for are key ideas about dialogic reading, what it could look like, and how to plan for it. We will have an opportunity to show those ideas in the chat box after the video. Here we go.
The Little Red Hen by Lucinda McQueen. So it says, once upon a time, there was a little red hen who shared her tiny cottage. The dialogic read aloud is a systematic method or way of reading to the children over the course of 3 sittings. Over the course of the 3 sittings, the children become actively engaged, and they, in turn, become the ones who are able to retell the stories. She shared her tiny cottage with a goose, a cat, and a dog. So the first reading, the teacher reads a story all the way through, maybe stopping once, but really we want children to hear the story, its fluidity, from the beginning to the end. Yesterday, we read the story about the little red hen that works very hard. Who are her friends? Do you remember who her friends are?
The dog.
So we have the dog. Who else?
The cat.
The cat and?
Goose.
The goose, the goose. Those are all her friends. On day 2, the children have previously heard the story. So the teacher can release some of that information, get them more engaged, initially having them recall some of the characters, what was the problem that occurred in the story. Do they help her?
No.
What do they do?
Sleepy.
So the dog sleeps? What does the cat do?
Brushing hair.
That's right, she brushes her hair. And who remembers what the goose does?
Talking a lot.
Yeah, she likes to chat, chat, chat. So today we are going to retell the story. And then highlighting still the same vocabulary that was introduced on day 1, but making it more meaningful, more comprehensible, perhaps bringing in some photographs, some realia. In this case, I brought in an apron. I brought in some flour for the children to see how it is that those grains of wheat, you know, what happened when they went to the mill and the miller turned those grains into flour. So things that are tangible that children can see, that they can get their hands on, helps to deepen that comprehension around the vocabulary and the storyline. When she got home, she asked her friends, who will plant these grains of wheat? And what did the goose say?
Not me.
Not I, said the goose. So the vocabulary development also increases throughout the different days. So initially the teacher is just, basically giving a kid-friendly definition. But on day 2, especially around the word sprout, using those gestures, using the total physical response where children are being asked to plant a seed, to water it, to pat it. So I'm gonna move some of the dirt. I'm gonna pretend to move the dirt around, and I'm going to plant my little seed in the ground. Can you show me how you're planting your seed, Angel? Oh, you're moving the dirt around. Now take that little seed and plant it in the ground. And maybe pat it a little bit. Perfect. When the grains of wheat began to sprout, that means they began to grow. So show me how your little seed starts to grow. It starts to grow. Very good. I have a picture here that shows how the seed was planted, and little by little, it needs sunlight, water, dirt, and air in order to grow. And you can see how it becomes a sprout. Say that with me. Sprout. Sprout. Perfect. All of that helps children make that language, that vocabulary, comprehensible to them, because sprout is not typically a word most 3 or 4-year-olds would possess, yet it's one that they'll continue to encounter throughout the rest of their lives. Who cut the wheat? Who threshed it and took it to the mill?
I did.
Who brought the flour home and baked this loaf of bread?
I did.
I did it all by myself, and now I am going to eat it all by myself. And that is exactly what she did. Whenever possible, we try to make connections to the theme. So in this case, the children were learning about the farm, but also brings in some of those cooperation skills, so some of those social skills that the teacher is also trying to work on in our classroom. So that of sharing, of everyone, contributing to the task. Those are some of those concepts that can also be worked on with the read-alouds. We are going to look at this book one more time. We have already read it 2 times before. Do you remember the title of the story? What's the title of the story?
The Little Red Hen.
Very good. It's The Little Red Hen. Let's all say that together. The Little Red Hen. And what happened in this story?
It didn't share.
Who didn't share?
The dog and the goose and the cat.
And the Little Red Hen didn't share with the goose, the dog, and the cat. How come? Why didn't she share?
Because he didn't help her.
That's right. So the goal of the Dialogic Read Aloud is to basically have the children be the ones to retell the story, to have taken ownership of the vocabulary, of the storyline, the characters, all of that, which makes up the story. And they basically are the ones who are retelling it. And the Little Red Hen ended up doing all of the work around the house. What are some of the things she would do? Wash the clothes. What else?
Garbage.
Take out the trash.
And the grass.
Yeah.
Cut the grass.
Cut the grass. Or she mowed the lawn. She mowed the lawn. Do you like to clean? Do you like to help your family clean at home? You don't? You do? What do you like to clean? Do you like to help take out the trash like the Little Red Hen?
Yeah.
Do you like to wash the clothes? Do you help to make dinner? What do you like to help out at home?
Dinner.
You like to help out with dinner? So thinking through ahead of time those prompts, those questions that the teacher will ask the children allows for that ongoing dialogue, that development of language to occur around the storyline, but also allows them to make connections to their own experiences. And so those are all ways in which children can become engaged, can make those connections to the stories that are being read. How about you, Eric?
Wash the clothes.
You like to help wash the clothes and fold the laundry?
I want to help my mom wash her clothes.
Oh, you do that? That's so wonderful. How about you?
Make breakfast.
Yeah, it's so wonderful that you help your family out. And then she asked, who will help me plant these grains of wheat?
Not me.
Not I,
Not I.
said the goose.
Not I. Said the cat. Not I. Said the dog.
Great job. And so then she said, I will
Plant it.
plant them myself. Show me how you planted your seed last time.
I took out the dirt and put my seeds and water in there. Growing.
Yeah, what do we call that when the seed starts to grow? It's called a
Sprout.
sprout. That's right. Show me how your seed is turning into a sprout. It's that ownership, that being able to retell a story on their own, which is something that's called for in both the DRDP as well as the preschool learning foundations. And it's a skill that continues to be utilized throughout elementary and even into high school and as adults as well. If you were friends with the Little Red Hen, what would you tell her? Would you say, you should share the bread? Or would you say, eat it all by yourself?
Eat it by yourself. Because it didn't help her.
They didn't help her. What would you say?
Eat it yourself.
eat it yourself? Why?
The goose and the doggy, they can't help it.
They didn't help. I would probably say, there's lots of bread. You might want to share with your friends and then remind them, next time, you better help me. Okay, thank you so much. I want you to go home this afternoon and tell your families all about the little red hen. What happened in the story? Do you think you can do that?
Yep. Yep.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, folks, I hope you enjoyed that video as much as I do. I just love watching those adorable little faces engage and just light up when they learn new vocabulary and their little brains are making sense of what they're listening to in this new language. So I'm going to ask you, take about a minute or so to think about one key idea that you want to remember from this video clip around dialogic reading. I'm so glad that you are finding this training helpful and useful. We only had an hour and I wanted to make sure that I gave you just enough resources to give you a good idea of what dialogic reading is, but also resources that you can easily go back to and explore further as you are intentionally planning your dialogic reading lessons. Yes, we see a range of the different types of prompts that the teacher was using. She used the completion prompt because it's the Little Red Hen is somewhat of a pattern book. She used the distancing prompt when she asked the children, do you like to clean? Tapping into their own experiences. She used some of the W prompts to indicate where and what was happening. So she did use a range of prompts. And notice, I hope you noticed that she had some little sticky notes on her book to remind her where she wanted to stop, to pause, and be very strategic about asking those dialogic reading questions. Wonderful. Excellent. I'm being mindful of the time, so keep your ideas popping in if you wish to continue to add to the chat box. But I am going to move on because it's almost time to close shop and there's just a couple of things that I want to go over. So one last thing is parent involvement. So yes, dialogic reading is a strategy that we as teachers can use in our classroom instructional settings, whether it's a live classroom or through remote learning. But it's also a strategy that can easily be implemented at home. So I want you to take note of this quote, again, based on research. Dialogic reading by families and caregivers results in substantial positive change or improvement or enhancement in language development. We learn by experiences and we show what we know with language. So whenever we have an opportunity to engage in dialogue, to ask questions, and guided by an adult or a language model, if you will, whether it's in English or in Spanish, because remember, we started off talking about how the primary language is an asset. So if you've got parents who are not proficient in English or they're just more comfortable with Spanish, that's absolutely okay. They can absolutely incorporate the dialogic reading strategy, some elements of it, in Espanol. In other words, how might I, as a teacher, encourage parents to try out some of the ideas of dialogic reading? We're not going to ask them to memorize the crowd prompts, obviously. We're not going to ask them to put sticky notes in their books, but I do want you to think about, based on what we know and understand about dialogic reading, how can we encourage and support parents or caregivers to use some of the strategies in dialogic reading at home when given an opportunity to read to their children? So think about that for a minute. What might we be able to share with a parent to help them engage in an element of dialogic reading so that they can use this best practice, this research-based practice at home? So go ahead and share your insights in the chat box. And please remember, it can be in any language. Dialogic reading is not an exclusive strategy of English. It is a language development, oral language development, vocabulary development strategy. And we know that the more sound, solid we are in the primary language, the easier and better it will be to gain that second, maybe even third language. So I'm going to move us right along because we've got just a couple of things that I want to share with you before we go. Just some quick ideas for how to support dual language learners. Repeated readings are very important. You noticed in the video that the teacher she chose to have 3 readings using the dialogic reading strategy. You don't have to do it 3 times. However, she was very intentional about the 3 readings and why she wanted to do it 3 times. She explained what the purpose for the reading was each of those times. So repeated readings are very important. It gives children an opportunity to listen to and be exposed to the same language, the same vocabulary over and over. Using different words for for a word that's in a sentence. So remember when she pointed out the word sprout, and she in this case she showed the plant, and I don't remember if she said the word shoot for sprout, but using different words to explain a non-familiar word is a really good way to help kids comprehend what they're listening to. The next 2 bullets have everything to do with providing translated versions of a material or of stories to parents, right? So again, do they have to have a book in English to be able to engage in a dialogic reading experience at home? No, it could be any book. It could be a book without words, right? It could be a picture book where all we're doing is asking questions about what children are seeing in Espanol or whatever language they choose to. When we offer definitions for words, we have to be careful that we are very strategic about how we explain the words. Remember, using synonyms or other words to explain an unknown word is better or more understandable than trying to give a definition for a word for children of this age. And then helping parents with some keywords. So if you get to the point where you are introducing a book to the child and you want that parent to be able to read that book with the child at home, then maybe give parents some ideas, some keywords that you want them to further explore or expand upon. So again, just some real quick tips for how we might be able to enhance language development for our dual language learners. So as we close up our session today, this hour went by really super fast. I want to reconnect us to our guiding questions. Did we meet our learning goals? Do we have a better understanding of who our dual language learners are and how to support them? Do we have a better understanding of what dialogic reading is? As well as how can we support our parent involvement? So I think we pretty much hit each one of those questions to some degree, and I hope that it gave you an idea and some resources to help you get started with dialogic reading. At the end of this presentation, I put together some resources both for you and for your parents. So when you get this presentation, I shared it with, I'll be sharing it with Karina, but I shared it with Marcela, so you should have access to it, I believe, sometime after our training today. These are all live links. And so when you go to any one of these, you'll be able to go directly to the website. Well, I didn't mean to do that. These are all live links. So when you have some time and are wanting to explore resources both for yourself and for parents, please take a look at these. These are just a few. I know it's actually a lot. I really was hoping to only give you 3, but these are so good that I thought, okay, they can pick and choose what they want. So these are all in English. These are all in Spanish. Please take some time to explore them. And on that note, I will hang around to answer any questions in the chat box. If you have any questions for me, I want to thank you very much and remind you that I was asked to remind you to make sure that you sign in with your email in the chat box, and there's an evaluation form that is going to go out as well. And so please make sure that you complete that evaluation form because there will be a raffle. So muchas gracias. Thank you very much. Be well, stay healthy. Thank you so much. I am honored to be here with you again. I wish I could see you live, but this is just fantastic for me to be able to reconnect with many of you today. Thank you. And again, here's my email. If you have any questions, you can reach me via email. Take care and God bless.